Good evening, everyone. Uh, Thank you for joining in on today's meeting. So, today we've been given an opportunity to have a session with Gerard. He's a Microsoft engineer on the .NET team. And yeah, I'm guessing he's going to give us the introduction, tell us about himself before he begins. Yeah, so today's session is going to be about .NET MAUI and Blazor Hybrid. So he'll give us an introduction, what it's like, what it's about, and what you can do with it. So, yeah, Jared, we'll pass it back to you so you can take over. Thank you. And welcome to everyone.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. This is great. This is great. Feel free. I'm not sure if I can be able to see you. I'm just going to move you to the other screen here. I don't know if you're able to chat and do all these things while I'm talking here. Please feel free to do so. I'll try to keep an eye on it if there's any questions. I'm not even sure if you're able to unmute or show your camera. Feel free to if you can. Yeah, my name is Gerald. I live in the Netherlands, which is far away, but it is in the same time zone, so that's convenient. So it should be 2015, 2010, where you are as well. I think maybe there's some other people joining from other places, but it's really cool to be here. This is not a place virtually where I do a lot of sessions, so I hope to be over to somewhere where you are, but typically it's Europe and the United States. But here we are. I work remotely for Microsoft. In the Netherlands on the .NET MAUI team as a software engineer. And as part of that, I also like to do these sessions, do a little bit of blogging, do some YouTube videos, which you might have already seen. So trying to do all of that to also, interact with you, get all the feedback, show you how to work with our product, and do all those amazing things. And for today, let me start sharing my screen here. Whoops, this is the wrong way around. Oh, I could have done it that way. You know what? Sorry, forgive me. Um, while I prepare this, let's swap this, see if I can share my screen here. This one. All right. There we go. Now, unless you can't see it correctly, please let me know. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep going here, trying to get this out of the way. Perfect. So this is what we're going to see, right? I'm going to talk about a little bit about the introduction here, .NET MAUI, Blazor, .NET MAUI Blazor, all the things together. Blazor Hybrid is what we call it. That's kind of like the name that we landed on. My name is Gerald, and then some unpronounceable last name, Versluis. If you want to have an attempt, try to do it. Versluis is my name. And then there's a little handle down there, which is even more unpronounceable, which is my initials and my last name. You can find me anywhere with that. If I would have known back then when I registered all the handles that I would go out and do all these things and all the talks and be some sort of internet celebrity, then I would have changed it to something else. I would have picked something more. Would have picked a stage name. That would be cool, right? Like I would just be Gerald. Like I would be like only first name only. That's the real artist, right? All right, there we go. So this is me. You can find me basically on any social media channel that you can think of. I'm not as active on all of them, but I registered my handle. I try to, cross post a little bit here and there. The most I have a love-hate relationship with Twitter. I'm kind of like back there. The other one I'm pretty active on is Blue Sky, and then of course YouTube. So follow me there. If you have any questions where you're like, I prefer my questions to kind of like come to me in public, so other people can chime in. We just launched the Mauiverse. I just remembered that the Mauiverse Discord. So Discord is another kind of like new Slack thing for young people. I don't know how old you are. I'm starting to feel pretty old because I don't understand everything on Discord anymore. But we have a Discord server. If you go to mauiverse.net/Discord, you can join it right there. There's already 650 people on there in 2 weeks. We're trying to make that the single place. It's nothing official for Microsoft, but the single place to go to for questions. So I love my questions to come to me public so other people can chime in as well, and I can tag other people if necessary. If you have something where you're like, oh, I cannot share this with the world, find me, shoot me an email. That's totally fine. And then there's my YouTube. So go find that too if you want to learn more. I have a ton of videos on there about what you're about to see here as well. Cool. So on the agenda for today, I think we have 90 minutes. My wife is putting the kids to bed, so I have all night as long as you'll have me. I think there was some Q&A planned, so please stick around for that. That's fine. But I think we planned 90 minutes, so maybe you want to have some other plans tonight as well. But this is kind of like the main question, right? Like, what is .NET MAUI Blazor, right? That's the thing that we're going to work up to, and we can break that up in a couple of things. What is .NET MAUI, right? So that's what we're going to learn first. What is Blazor? We're going to see some of that. Usually, I would do kind of like a show of hands, like, hey, who does not know what this is? Can't really see it here. Actually, I can't see the chat at all anymore. If I start clicking here, oh, I can bring it back. Okay, cool. So if there's something that you already know, maybe a little bit about, hopefully we'll make that up in a different section, and you'll always learn something new anyway, right? So that's how kind of like how it works. And then we take it all together. What is .NET MAUI Blazor, right? Like I just told you, like we kind of like landed on Blazor Hybrid right now, but this slide doesn't really work very well with that name. So whenever I say .NET MAUI Blazor or whatever it says that on a slide, I mean Blazor Hybrid, right? We got a couple of different names. Don't be confused. It is very confusing because we stick Blazor into everything now. But that's the thing I mean. It will all become clear. So let's start with the first one. What is .NET MAUI? Well, that's our cross-platform apps, our cross-platform framework based on C# and .NET with which you can build apps for iOS, Android, Windows, and macOS. Now, if you've been around with us a little bit longer, then you probably know Xamarin Forms, right? That's what we had before, and that was our cross-platform apps framework for C# and .NET, but for iOS, Android, and UWP. Right, so UWP, we don't really do that anymore. It's deprecated, it's obsolete. We have WinUI now, WinUI 3. So we are doing that. That's our backend now for .NET MAUI. But back then it was UWP. And then in the little letters there, in the tiny print, in the fine print, it says Tizen, Linux, WPF, and macOS. So we had support for all these platforms. Most of them were donated by the community, so they were in our repository. You could use it, but honestly, like it wasn't all up to par with like iOS, Android, and UWP, right? So that always kind of sucked. We could say we supported those platforms, but we really didn't. Then to take it even further, like there's a whole history here, right? Like Xamarin was a separate startup, super hip and happening back in San Francisco, I think, and they were doing amazing things, and they started to enable us to build cross-platform apps, iOS, Android, mostly, and Windows, because that came for free if you're doing C# and .NET, right? Based on C# and .NET. So that was really cool. And then at some point in 2016, from the top of my head, they were acquired by Microsoft, and they made everything available for free, because before then, the Xamarin licenses cost like 2,000 USD, United States dollars per year, I think, per developer. I paid that back then. But then Microsoft came along and they made everything free, right? So free for everyone, which is really cool, and open source, so that was great too. If you go back into history, there's people who said, Xamarin Forms, right? It's already a little bit of boring name. Forms, like who likes forms, right? You write on them and that's it. You have to. So it's already a little bit of boring name. And people were like, that's for just data entry applications and prototyping even. And if you look at the website from back then, I'm not sure if this is taken from the website of Microsoft at that point, or this was from Xamarin. But you don't even have to read like everything that's on the right. You just have to look at the pictures, right? Like Xamarin Forms is best for, and then you look at the pictures right there. It has boxes, right? It's a form. It's a data entry application. Ooh, it has a blue button. Wow, that's amazing. And then if you look at the layer below, we'll get to how that all works together in a minute. It says Xamarin iOS and Xamarin Android are the best for media players and games and apps with maps, because a map makes every app better, right? So that will make the amazing apps. And Xamarin Forms is kind of like for the boring blah 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 applications that you use in businesses, right? But people would take the applications with the so-called renderers that we had back then. They were extensible, right? So you could hook into that. We, as the Xamarin Forms team, would build renderers with like, hey, this is how we think things should work, and we bind all the properties from the native element to the cross-platform element, and vice versa. But you could hook into that and change the entire behavior, right? Or you could create renderers and C# bindings for stuff that were on the platform that we didn't surface on the abstract layer, right? So people started doing that, and sure enough, if you weren't really knowing what you're doing, which a lot of people didn't because it was pretty complicated back then, you would run into performance issues, right? And I think definitely Xamarin Forms wasn't really architected for all the things that people started doing with it. It wasn't thought of as like, okay, what crazy stuff are people going to do with this? Are they going to build media players and games and maps? So you would kind of like hit performance issues. It was super complicated to create the custom renderers because you would have to know a lot about the internals of Xamarin Forms. So lots of stuff there that we could improve. Then around the time of .NET 6, we started working on .NET MAUI. And that is kind of like, it's not a complete rewrite, but it's not just a rename as well, right? So it's kind of like in between there. All the outside APIs back then were 90% the same, 95% the same. So you should not have noticed anything when transitioning from Xamarin Forms to .NET MAUI. But under the hood, we changed the whole architecture, right? And that's why you probably did notice some things, because in behavior, definitely some things changed, but it was for the better, right? So a lot of things changed. With all the learnings from Xamarin Forms, we took that, put it into .NET MAUI, and now we have this whole new thing. Back in .NET 6, I'll be honest, it wasn't the best version, right? It was super unstable. It wasn't great. But now from .NET 7, .NET 8 was kind of like the sweet spot where a lot of people were like, yes, I trust this product now. And now we're on .NET 9, and .NET 10 is coming with a ton of new stuff too. So very, very exciting. So got all of that. Now we have .NET MAUI. Like I said, it stands for .NET Multi-Platform App UI. We made the P lowercase because else it would be .NET MAUI, and that would be a little bit different, right? So we have .NET MAUI, which is now our cross-platform offering based on C# and .NET. That hasn't changed for iOS, Android, Windows, and macOS. See, so we changed that a little bit. Still iOS, still Android, still Windows. We call it Windows now. Doesn't matter which framework we use under the hood for that. And macOS became a first-class citizen, right? Which kind of like comes for free because Apple has a great way for us to deploy the iOS app and run it on macOS, which they call Mac Catalyst. So we kind of like get that for free so that we also have the support for macOS. Perfect. We'll learn all about that. Very simply put, what we do at Microsoft with .NET MAUI is take this native component, which is called on iOS a UI activity indicator, and on Android it's called a progress bar. I always kind of like dramatically pause here. Progress bar, Android, really? It's a circle. It's a spinning circle. It doesn't even look like a bar at all. Okay. So Android has a lot of these things. iOS too, by the way. We take these native controls, and what we do is we put that in an abstract layer, the activity indicator. That's how we call it, right? And then if you declare an activity indicator in your UI, in .NET MAUI, in XAML, or you can use C# if that's what you want, you will get the UI activity indicator on iOS and the progress bar on Android, right? It will translate to the native components that are used on that platform, and then we map the properties of the activity indicator, like the color, is it spinning, yes or no? We map that to the properties for you so that you can use all of those things. But it translates into native components on each platform. Same thing for a slider, for a button, for all the things that are in the box for .NET MAUI. In our case, we call it a slider, right? So there we have that. So how does .NET MAUI work? If we dig a little bit deeper, you want to be focused on your app code, right? That's your $1 million idea. That's the one that's going to make you rich, right? So you don't have to go to these boring sessions anymore. That's the thing that you want to actually be productive on, right? And you want to deploy that to iOS on the left, Android on the left. The logo is gone, so that's why I'm confused. iOS, macOS, and Windows, or a couple of these, right? If you are very sure, nothing in life is sure, but if you're very sure that your app is only ever going to run on Android, .NET MAUI doesn't make a whole lot of sense, right? So maybe then .NET MAUI is not for you. Maybe you should use Jetpack Compose, learn Java. I don't know what you can use to build Android apps. If you know for sure that that's your only thing, or you must love XAML and C# and .NET, right? Be my guest. But the real power of .NET MAUI obviously comes from the fact that you have this single code base and you can deploy it to all of these platforms. So you have that app code. We have all these platforms with their own SDK. So if you would not use .NET MAUI or other cross-platform frameworks, then you would have to build the same app like 2, 3, 4 times, right? That's not what you want to do. So what we do is like, hey, we made the .NET runtime available on all of these platforms, right? So we have the .NET runtime running on Android, iOS, macOS, and Windows. Windows kind of like comes for free, right? That is what Microsoft does. But it's a big thing that we have this running on Android, iOS, and macOS because that were things that weren't available to us before. before, if you really want to deep dive, before that was all running on Mono, right? So we had kind of like a open source implementation of the whole .NET framework, which is called Mono, and that still was kind of like running on Android, iOS, and macOS. We're changing that, but it doesn't matter to you anymore as of .NET MAUI because it all shares the same .NET base class library, right? So that's kind of like the thing that you're going to talk to. It all shares the same base class library, and we internally figure out like if it should run on Mono, the Mono implementation, or the core CLR one, right? So you don't have to worry about that anymore. And we're actually working to make that whole, integrating it all into the same thing so that it will actually be the same thing. Because technically what could happen right now is that you do have a bug on Android, iOS, and macOS, but not on Windows because it uses two separate things. But we're working on that. You shouldn't notice that anymore. Then on top of that, you have .NET for Android, .NET for iOS / Mac Catalyst, and WinUI, right? Those are the frameworks that we are using under the hood. If you've been with us since the Xamarin times, then you probably know this as Xamarin.Android and Xamarin.iOS, right? They do the real magic, if I'm being honest, because what they do is for every API on Android, so every API on the Android operating system, they make bindings, is what we call them. So they make every API available to use in C# and .NET, right? So that's what they do. They make sure that everything that is available in Java is available to us, but now using C# and .NET. Same for iOS. So what's happening now, back in, when is that, June? So last month, Apple announces his new iOS version, and the .NET for iOS team is like watching this. They're excited, but they're also like, oh my gosh, please don't introduce too many breaking new things, because now they're like doing like crazy. Android is kind of like relaxed that way, but iOS is like, they announce it in June, they release it in September, and then you're required to use it in like April the next year, right? So iOS has to be ready. So their summer is usually like they're creating these bindings like crazy, right? So they have a lot of work to do, but they're doing a really great job. And then on top of that, we now have all these APIs available for us, all the controls available to us in C# and .NET. So what we are doing with Xamarin Forms back then and .NET MAUI now is put a layer on top, an abstraction layer where you say, hey, I have a button, I want to use that in my UI, and we're going to translate that to a UI button on iOS because we can do that in C# and .NET, and a Android button on Android, and a button in WinUI, right? Or the slider, or the activity indicator, or whatever you can think of. Cool, cool, cool. So now you only can focus on your app code, be productive there. You have to know how to work with .NET MAUI, of course, and then you can roll out your application on all of these platforms. So how that's implemented, very much following the .NET paradigm, right? You have these base class libraries, kind of like, it's not the base class library, but you have this set of libraries that right there for like, hey, system.NET system IO to the file system operations and whatnot, link, XAML. And then on top, we kind of like supplement that with the libraries specific to iOS. This is not all of them. This is a couple of them: MapKit, UIKit, SiriKit, etc. And then if you're going to run on Android, then we have the Android specific libraries on top there too. And then you just have this set of APIs that you can work with from C# and .NET as you're used to. Because of the whole history with Xamarin, whenever we launched, we already had like, boom, 40 plus controls, all the navigation that you can think of, adaptive layouts, right, with desktop and mobile, very different form factors, of course. So you can use all these adaptive layouts if you want to build an app that runs on both mobile and desktop, right? You will have so much more screen estate, and you can have these adaptive layouts where you can say, hey, whenever you are running on a mobile screen, then you only have like this vertical thing, and then whenever you switch it to maybe a tablet, that's a common use case as well, or a desktop, then you suddenly have this white space all around, right? So you could do all kind of like adaptive things with like, okay, now I have this much more space, so I'm going to rearrange a couple of things so that it looks nice and the user experience is great on those devices as well. Right to left, right? So if you're in a country where they read from right to left, we got everything for that as well. Honestly, like in the Xamarin Forms times, also the adaptive layouts and right to left and accessibility were things that you can probably relate. Like those are easy to forget whenever you don't need it. And you're just working on an app and you work on an app, and the things that are important to you are the things that you're going to work with, right? That's just how it works. So that's what you'll test, that's what you'll implement, and then afterwards you'll be like, oh gosh, yes, accessibility is super important. I honestly think that, but it's also very easy to forget. So now with .NET MAUI, we did have that top of mind. We were like, okay, we're going to get this right from day one, and that's what we did. Same with right to left. So we got all of that in there. Now, this is all in the box for .NET MAUI, and it's probably outdated by now. I think we have even more controls and stuff in there. This is what it looks like. I think this is an overview of all the controls, or most of them at least. So it's a little bit small maybe on your screen, but you have like all the buttons and all kinds of variations there on the left. Checkboxes, a grid for the layout, right? You want to lay out some things as well. Progress bar, you can draw shapes, you can use images, obviously, a search bar, radio button, all the controls that you can use to build your basic application. And you have everything to build your own controls or customize controls as well. Together with that, all kinds of styling options, of course. Now, obviously, there will be a question probably in your head like, hey, how does this all relate to Flutter, right? Or if you want to stay into .NET, how does this all compare to Avalonia, right? Well, they take a very different approach, right? If we think back about how .NET MAUI translates everything to the native controls, what Avalonia and Flutter, mainly those two, do is they draw everything on the screen, right? That's super cool, because that means it will look the exact same way on iOS, on Android, on desktop. I think they can even deploy to the web, which is great, right? If that's what you want, if that's what your requirements are, then that's fantastic. You can do it. You should pick that framework. What we're doing is we translate everything to native controls. Great example, again, now no disrespect to Flutter, but Flutter is in the news right now with like Liquid Glass. They're kind of like panicking us on levels. We cannot implement Liquid Glass without having to figure out how to draw that on a screen. They have to do a lot of work if they want to imitate the new styling stuff that's coming out in iOS 26 in September, right? We get that for free. Whenever we get our app building against Xcode 26, iOS 26, everything just changes for us. We're already translating to native stuff. iOS did all the hard work, making the tab bar now look like liquid glass things. We compile against that. Everything looks like liquid glass for us, right? So, but then on the other hand, like it doesn't look 100% the same, because now if you're going to deploy to Android, it's not going to look like liquid glass, like, right? So if Flutter does implement it, I think they said they're not officially going to do it, but let's say they did, then you can suddenly have liquid glass on Android if that's what you wanted, right? So then they are suddenly in the advantage. Maybe you could say like, hey, I'm going to deploy these liquid glass applications through Android. Um, Again, advantage. This kind of like sounds again like one framework should win. I absolutely am against that. There's all kinds of discussions like which one is better. Blah, blah, blah. I try to stay from that because they're both good, right? It does different things. It has different audiences. Pick whatever works for you, what makes you happy, what makes you productive, what fits your requirements, right? That's the most important. I love all the things here. Kind of like a long route to this slide here. Styling options, we do obviously have a lot of styling options where you can say, hey, we can support light theme, dark theme. You can give everything a color. You can style a lot of things so that it looks pretty much the same across the different platforms, but it will still have the same behaviors. And what's another thing is like, hey, this also works like all the things for the accessibility that I just mentioned. That are available on the operating system work out of the box, right? Where for Flutter, for instance, like everything's drawn. So a text box might look like a text box and feel like a text box, but it's not actually a text box. It's something that's drawn. So everything for accessibility has to be implemented by the Flutter team to actually, work with a text box. Things like pasting and copying and pasting text needs to be implemented by the Flutter team. That's all the stuff that we get for free. So also like all the accessibility stuff, everything should work out of the box. Now we have lots of styling options, visual state manager. So when you're kind of like, pressed something, you can set a certain state and change the styling depending on that. Custom fonts, icon fonts, of course, all those kind of things. Images in many formats, all that stuff is on. Now, if you do need to, this is a little bit advanced, so if you're seeing this for the first time, this might look a little bit scary. Don't worry about it. Whenever you start looking into this, it will become more clear what you could do with this. And hopefully, if we do our job correctly, then you should never see this. But if you do need to customize controls, like I already mentioned, like we had renderers back in Xamarin Forms, now we have handlers. And before, you would have to create an inheritance from the renderer class. So you need to know which renderer class that was, create an inheritance, know which lifecycle to hook into, blah, 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 blah. Now you can do this, I don't know, 5 lines if you count the braces in there, 2 lines if you don't, where you say like, hey, append to mapping. I know that I want to remove that underline on Android, which they're still doing in 2025. I want to remove that. This is just, a couple of lines and you can remove it for your whole application, just for one entry if that's what you want. You can customize it for something that we didn't surface because this is something that is very unique to one platform, right? To the Android platform. The underline is only there. So what we kind of like do with .NET MAUI is we surface the most common denominator. Is that the least? Most? I don't know. Whatever, like the properties that are available on all the platforms, that's what we will implement. If it's like something very super platform specific, chances are that we won't implement it, and you can customize it with this kind of thing, right? So there you have it. You can write platform specific code with this. So you can use this. You can also use partial classes, again, a little bit more advanced, so that because now you're suddenly using these Android namespaces, right? So you see Android views entry. This is not going to compile on iOS because iOS is like Android namespaces. What are you talking to me? What's this? So you want to make sure that you're only compiling this for Android, access the handler from anywhere because it's a static, and then you can append, prepend, or modify the mapper. It's kind of like playing with where this should be applied. Not really important right now. Then we have Microsoft and MAUI.graphics. So as kind of like the same paradigm as .NET MAUI does for controls, we also have that for graphics. Each platform has a native drawing library, right? So that is always the fastest library because it's supposed to live on that platform for drawing lines, boxes, blah, 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 PDFs, all these kinds of things. And we also made a unified API for that so that you can say, hey, I just want to draw this thing. And then under the hood, it will use the native drawing library for that on that platform so that it's super fast, but you still have that one API that you can use that which is C# and .NET, which will make it easier for you to work with. Cool. Oh, there we go. There was supposed to be a slide here that says demo, but let's go back. So let's do a little bit of a quick demo of this. Let me switch here. There's a little bit of magic. Oh, I'm giving away my magic, see? We're on a Mac here, and then boom, we're suddenly on Windows. But it's just a remote desktop thing, right? So here, Visual Studio 2022, you can do everything that I'm showing you here today with the Community Edition. Honestly, like I get all the highest enterprise tier stuff, obviously, at Microsoft. But I think everything I'm showing here can be done with like the free Enterprise Edition, if that's what you need. So it's all open source, it's all free, you can just use that. And then whenever you kind of like install Visual Studio, you'll have to check the .NET MAUI checkbox to get the workload installed. And whenever you do that, whenever you create a new project, you will see it show up here. I got it here in my recent project templates, obviously. But then if you search for MAUI, you'll get a couple of things. Not this one, this is not important, but you'll see these, right? So .NET MAUI app, let me see if I can zoom that in for you a little bit. Is it this one? Yep, there we go. That's the one. Zoom it in a little bit. Zoom, zoom, zoom. Oh, there we go. So .NET MAUI app, right? That's the one that we're going to see right now, which is like your .NET MAUI app that you want to use probably. .NET MAUI Blazor Hybrid app, right? That's what I'm going to talk about in a minute here. Then we have a class library where you can share your code in a DLL, right? DLL file, but specifically for .NET MAUI, a DLL that can target the cross-platform iOS, Android, etc. Not super important unless you go a little bit beyond the basics. Then we have a new template for .NET MAUI Blazor Hybrid and web app. So another question that comes up a lot is like, hey, can you deploy your .NET MAUI app to the web? No, you cannot. But if you're going to use .NET MAUI Blazor or Blazor Hybrid, then you can, of course, share code with your web app, right? With your Blazor web app that you can deploy to the web. Personally, I don't believe in deploying the exact same code to the web from your .NET MAUI app. I already think that deploying your app between mobile and desktop already a lot of work to get that experience correctly. And then from there to the web, I think that is such an amount of work that you should probably just, create a separate project to deploy to the web. Make sure that that experience is great. You can share code with the things that I'm going to show you here. You should absolutely do that. But running the exact same code with the UI and then having all the if statements in there with like if running on desktop, if running on web, do all these things to make it optimized. That will be so much work and such unreadable code that you should just put it in a separate project. That's for. I'm sorry, I need a little sip here. All right, there we go. And then the .NET MAUI multi-project app. I'll get to that in a minute as well. Actually, I'll explain that by creating a new .NET MAUI app. So .NET MAUI app, click next. Project name, MAUI app 5, sounds amazing. Location is great. Solution name, place it here. Okay, cool. Then you can say, hey, make this for .NET 9 or .NET 10. Important thing here, if that's something that you care about or your company cares about, .NET MAUI does not fall under the LTS, long-term support, or STS cycle, if that means anything to you. So every even version number of .NET is an LTS, long-term support version, which is supported for like 3 years, I think, from the top of my head. And then every odd number is supported for only a year or 18 months, something like that. And a lot of companies are like, oh no, we need to do only LTS because that's more stable or blah, blah. More stable is no, not true. Like every version goes through the same quality checks and all the code that is in .NET 9 will also be in .NET 10. So not more stable. Yes, you will have a little bit longer support, but as long as you're kind of like, if you have the luxury of just being on .NET 9, upgrading to .NET 10 immediately, upgrading to .NET 11, you shouldn't even need to support that long, right? Just follow along with the releases as they come, and you should be in no trouble. .NET MAUI does not follow this policy. .NET MAUI is always a short support cycle thing, so it's only supported for 18 months, basically. Whenever a new version comes out, support for the old version expires in like 6 months or something. So always be on the latest version of .NET MAUI, simply because we depend on like third parties, like the iOS bindings, like the Android bindings. We cannot guarantee 3 years and fixing a bug thing from 3 years ago, but because it might not be available in iOS anymore, right? So always be on the latest version. That's kind of like how we roll forward. So .NET 9, .NET 10 is in preview right now. It's coming out in November, but .NET 9 is the stable version. And then if you want to kind of like look into a more complete application to play with, you can check this box, include sample content, and that will kind of like give you a pretty complete application with all kinds of sample content, a local database, playing with the device sensors, doing all kinds of crazy things, right? So that will give you a full sample, and then this one without the checkbox will just give you a very basic application with an image and some simple button that will increment some code, right? So let's just stick with that for now. I'll let you play with the very complete sample on your own. Oh no, my license will expire in 30 days. Okay. I'm not going to worry about that. I'm sure it'll be good. Actually, I'm on vacation right now, so this is my last week of vacation. So I'll worry about that on Monday. I hope my boss will extend it for me. So cool. You'll get this whenever you do a new project, and I was going to tell you about like the .NET MAUI multi-project, I think. So again, if you've been working with Xamarin Forms before, then you would have expected here to be like a lot of projects, right? Like you would have a shared project and then one for iOS and Android and Windows. But now it's just one project. You can do everything from one project, which is super cool. And if you still need something platform specific, and you always will, because iOS has a piece of metadata that determines how your app will be shown on the home screen, which icon it uses, which name it uses, and then for the permissions mostly, like how do you declare the permissions? Do you need the location permission, blah, blah, blah. All of that is still available under the platforms folder, right? So if you need to do any platform specific stuff, they're all here, right? Android, iOS, Mac Catalyst, Tizen, Windows, you can do all of that. For iOS, you can see the entry points too, right? Like On Windows, the entry point is always like the main loop, right? That's your little main thingy. But for iOS, we have a different entry point to our application, right? Where the operating system is like, oh, I'm going to start the application through here. So we need to take that into account because at the end of the day, we still have to provide iOS with an IPA file and Android with an AAB or an APK file. They're not going to say like, oh yeah, send me an exe file and we'll figure it out for you, right? That's not what you're going to do. So we need to make sure that it ends up being a actual native application. And as part of that, we will always need this platform specific stuff. And if you really want to write platform specific code, you totally can, where you're like, oh, I know this API is available on iOS, Liquid Glass stuff, for instance. Then you can go in here and you can start writing platform specific stuff. It's still C#, it's still .NET, but you can suddenly see like, hey, using UI kit, which is not something that's in the .NET framework, right? Or Objective-C runtime. So you'll see these little scary things, but you can still write C# and .NET and do all these crazy cool things. And you can have this little drop down here in Visual Studio, where you can see like, hey, what is this code targeting? And you can see this is only available for iOS, right? And if I go into, the shared code right here, so
Hello,
everything,
Gerald.
yeah, yep,
Hello. Just a
yeah.
sec. I'm not sure if it's the same for everyone, but I think the screen's frozen.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Maybe try to close and like reshare.
Yeah, let's do it. Can you see it now? Can you see me selecting text and moving around?
Not yet.
Nope. Yet?
It hasn't shown up yet.
Yep. It's working on my end, okay?
Oh, okay.
Is it maybe just you? Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
maybe
I
it's my
see someone
internet
raising their hand.
connection.
Wait. If okay, stop raising your hand, unknown user. I don't know who you are. If it's not working for you, raise your hand in Teams. Isaac? Okay. Unknown user. I'm not sure about you because you raised your hand before that. Okay. Oh, Tapiwa. Okay. So for some people it seems to be working, for others it's not. Interesting. Can people put something in the chat or not? Can you let us know if it's not working for you? I'm moving around, I'm selecting text. Is it working for everyone?
Yeah, I think it's maybe probably my internet connection.
Okay, maybe you could quickly rejoin and see if that fixes it for you.
Okay, let me do that.
All right, I'm gonna keep talking and pretend like it's all working for everyone. Let me know if that's not the case. So what was I saying? Yes. Okay. So this is iOS specific code. And if everything outside of the platforms folder is then shared code, right? So if I go to my MAUI program, everything that you write here, all the UI that you do right here, Isaac, I see that you joined. If it's still not working, let me know in the chat. Everything outside of the shared, the platforms folder, will be shared, right? So if you look again at that drop down that I just showed, hopefully your screen wasn't frozen. You can see it right here. Then it says like suddenly Android, iOS, Mac Catalyst, and Windows, right? So you can see all the platforms here. And if you switch around them, then you can also see things light up, right? So if I start doing here, like if Android, and you can also do Android API versions, right? You can see like, hey, if Android 32 or beyond, you can do all these kind of crazy things too. And then here end if, and I can say, yeah, fantastic, Copilot, let's do it. I can do this, and you can see it says iOS here right now, right? So you can see like, hey, it's grayed out, right? It's not doing anything because it's only for Android. And if I switch to, this is interesting with scrolling in remote desktop. If I do Android right here, you can see it lights up, right? And then suddenly I get like my IntelliSense and my red squiggles, because now suddenly I'm in Android context and it will show me all the code that is compiled whenever I use Android, right? So that's kind of like how that works. Hopefully you shouldn't need it that much, but now you know where to kind of like look for. And you can switch context by using this drop down right here. Everything I'm showing here today is also available, by the way, in Visual Studio Code. So if you're on a Mac, you can use Visual Studio Code. But I think most people are still always on Windows. So there's that. Okay, so I was talking actually about like the platform, the project structure right here. So for example, in Forms, you would have like multiple ones for iOS, Android, etc. And then you would set the starter project for one of these, set it to iOS if you want to run on iOS, set it for Android if you want to run iOS for Android. Now it's all in one project, which has advantages whenever you want to use resources, right? So if you want to use fonts or app icons, you can just put them in one place here right now. While before, you would have to duplicate them on the iOS project and the Android project and make sure that you got the file in both of them, and not forget them and keep it all in sync. And then for images, it was even worse because you will have to provide images in all kinds of different scales. For iOS, I think it's only 3, but for Android, there's like a gazillion different viewports out there with all the device vendors that are creating their own crazy devices. And you would have to scale your images all kinds of ways and provide all the different variations for that. Now we have this one resources. You can just put them in here. And I have a PNG in here right now, but if I would put an SVG in here, I think the app icon is an SVG, we can scale that for you automatically, right? We do the same for a PNG, but an SVG always doesn't lose quality, right? So preferably you would put an SVG in here and it scales automatically for you to all the variations that we need. Now, besides that, MAUI program is kind of like your starting point for your MAUI app, right? Whoops. So you can see if you've been working with ASP.NET, probably that's something a lot of people kind of like start with. We have like adopted some of the things here with the app builder. So you do create builder, and then with the builder, you can say use MAUI app, configure fonts. You can do dependency injection like you're used to from ASP.NET. So you can say builder.services.add singleton main page, right? Copilot help me, and you can do all your services in there, etc. And then whenever you want to dependency inject those into other stuff, then you can do that the exact same way that you're used to from ASP.NET or other projects in the .NET ecosystem, right? So we adopted that so that it looks very familiar because you're starting a .NET project. There's still enough to learn about the cross-platform things here for mobile, and each platform has their own kind of like specifics that you need to learn anyway. But everything that we can kind of like do to make it easier for you, we try to adopt that way. So we got all of that, then builder.build, which is great. Okay, start running. Then we have this app XAML right here, which can be used for resource dictionary. So you can, the styling that I talked about, right? You can have the colors and you can have those styles defined here in one place and then use them throughout your whole application. Then we have the app shell. Can help you a little bit beyond the scope of this session, I think, but shell is kind of like our opinionated way to kind of like shape your application. It has URL-based routing, so you can just say, hey, go to this page by specifying a URL, and you can say, hey, I want to put this in a flyout page, or I want to put this in a tab bar, and then it will automatically show up correctly for you. Or if you want to take full control over like, hey, how things should be laid out, you can use tab pages and flyout pages, etc., just like that. But shell is pretty convenient and helps you with kind of like all of that. You will look into that whenever you start building your first application. And then here we have the main page of XAML, which is a typical XAML page, right? So if you've been working with Microsoft products before, then you probably know XAML. You might love it, you might hate it. I learned to love it. Everything you can do in XAML, you can also do in C#, right? So all the samples that you'll see from us will be mostly XAML because that's what we do. We try to push XAML because that's the thing that we think is the most convenient one. But everything that you see here, you can do with C# just as well. And then you can see like all the abstract stuff, right? Scroll views to make sure that whenever something falls off the screen, people can scroll to it. A vertical stack layout, so that is just a layout. You don't visually see it, but it makes sure to stack all the children in there vertically. We also have a horizontal stack layout. And then we have an image, we have a label, we have a button, and you can set a bunch of properties on those, right? For the image, you can set a source, right? Makes sense because you want to show an image, and we need a source for that. You can set the height of it. You can set the aspect, right? Like chances are that the dimensions here, the height request is going to be less than the actual image. So do you want it to actually fill the image component, or do you want it to, aspect fit is what we're doing here so that it sizes it down, but it remains kind of like the aspect so that it still looks okay and it doesn't look stretched. This is the accessibility that I mentioned. This is super important for screen readers and stuff. So whenever people use screen readers on their device, this is the description that will be read to them. .NET bot in a hovercraft number 9, right? So that people who cannot visually see still know what's on the image. Label, text, makes sense. Style, so you can apply the styling right here. More things here. And then the button, you can give it an X name, right? So this is where the XAML starts to be a little bit magic. And this makes sure that you have a variable name, and this will be the variable name, in your C# code behind, right? So in the code behind of XAML, every XAML page has a XAML.cs, and now you can reference in code this counter button. And I can do the same for label or any element here. Text click me, and then whenever it's clicked, you can do this event right here. Now, MVVM works very well together with XAML. MVVM is a design pattern which separates your code, but you can also, so everything has a command that's kind of like the MVVM way, but we also have events for all the things. So we here have a clicked event, and then if I go to actually that main page.xaml.cs here, you can see the code behind for it, and you can just write code as you're used to, right? On counter click, that was the event that we just hooked up, count plus plus, which is a little field right here, and if count is 1, we set that counter button from the X name, right, that we've just seen, dot text to this thing, and then counter button dot text whenever the count is more than 1. We want to say times and not time. That's always an awkward little thing that we see, right? And then we can again use accessibility helpers to say like semantic screen reader announce, and this will help the screen reader announce like, hey, counter button dot text is now this, so that the user who's visually impaired now knows like, okay, this thing happened, right? This actually did something. So that's all that. Now, I can run this on Windows, right? Boom, I can run this on Windows. It will be a native Windows application. You can see it. It will be a desktop app. The UI is a little bit awkward because, it's a thing that's built for mobile mostly, and now it's stretched out on this desktop application. So we probably should do a little bit of a better job with those responsive layouts that I mentioned a little bit earlier. But here we go. And then it should come up. Windows application, right? Click me. That all works. Very, very cool. You can see here the XAML live preview. So we got a couple of helpers here in Visual Studio as well. This won't be in Visual Studio Code. This is only in Visual Studio, where you can kind of like, while running, hover over here and you can click the image. It will take you to the right place in XAML right here. And then you can actually start changing things here as well, and I can add some extra things, so you can see that it updates automatically while I'm running, so you don't have to restart the application all the time, and it's actually updating all these things, because especially deploying to Android and iOS can take a little bit of time. So to make that a little bit easier, we've implemented all these little tools for you that makes this a little bit easier. So got all that. Cool. Now the exact same code, we don't have the separate projects anymore to run on different platforms. So how do we do it? Well, if you go to the little run menu right here and you click the little button, you will also see Android emulators. You will also see iOS local devices, iOS remote devices. If you have a actual Mac on your network, so a Mac Mini or a MacBook or whatever, which you will need if you want to get serious about building an iOS application. Apple requires, it's not a technical requirement. We can probably make it work if we would want to. Apple requires an iOS app to be built on a Mac machine. We have Mac machines in CI for like GitHub Actions and kind of stuff. Azure DevOps, you can run it on Mac machines. You can do your build, you can do your CI there. But you will need a Mac OS device to kind of like generate the certificates to actually bring it to the store. That's just what Apple does. There's no way to get around it for us. We're sorry. But we've made it as easy as possible. You can have a Mac on your network. You can connect to it from Visual Studio, and then you can build your application and bring up the iOS remote simulator right here on Windows. You just connect your Mac to the network. You don't even have to see it if you don't want to, which is a shame because they're beautiful devices, but also very expensive. So you can connect it to here. You can build your whole iOS application through here, but it needs to be built on iOS. There's no way for us to get around that, unfortunately. So if I would have that set up, you could see it right here. But for now, the easiest thing to always do is just select the Android emulator. You can install that, have that set up, and then I can click, hey, exact same code, didn't change anything. Now say I want to run this on Android. It's going to launch the emulator. It's going to run the exact same code, show the exact same thing, but now running on Android, same C# and .NET code. Takes a little while to get there. So maybe we should just move on for the sake of time instead of waiting for this. Like I said, like especially deploying on Android can take a little bit of a while. Usually the first time, if you then start iterating over it and deploy to it a second time, it goes much, much faster. But especially the first time can take a little bit of time. Cool. So while we're waiting on that, oh, it's coming. While I'm saying that, it's coming, it's coming. Cool. Okay, let's wait a little bit longer. Anything else I can tell you here? So maybe a little bit of a sidetrack, and not because I'm paid to convince you to use this, but because I'm actually genuinely more and more impressed with like all the AI stuff. Did you work with like GitHub Copilot and stuff yet? Like all the AI stuff that's in here. Again, I'm very spoiled. I can just use this to whatever extent I want, and I don't have to pay for it. So it probably costs some money, but we're using this more and more internally. And especially like GitHub Copilot, it's now available in, I think, Visual Studio 17.14. So if you go here, help, where is it? About, I'm looking for about, oh, about Visual Studio, there it goes. 17.14, right? I'm using a preview version, but if you're like 17.14 and up, you'll have this little GitHub Copilot thing here as well. And again, if you have like the right license and whatever, you can bring it up here, and you'll have like agent mode, right? And agent mode doesn't only give you feedback on like what does this piece of text do, or help me solve this problem, and it will guide you through it by giving you text. But agent mode actually also makes the edits. So it will edit your files, it will run terminal commands, it will inspect the output of those terminal commands, and it will say, oh, it looks like this thing is wrong. We're using that heavily more and more. I'm using that heavily more and more. Also, there's all kinds of tools integrated in GitHub directly where you can just assign an issue to Copilot and it will go out and fix it. It's amazing stuff. It's very dependent on the model, so you can also then select the model here. How good the results are. But so for some tasks, it absolutely sucks. But I've also been able to generate complete libraries for .NET MAUI by just using Copilot and talking to it. So really, really amazing stuff. And again, I'm not just saying this because I have to, because it's not part of this presentation, but I'm genuinely impressed with how far it's come and what cool stuff you can do. Well, I've talked long enough now so that the Android emulator did come up. And again, you can see here also this pops up in like the exam live preview, right? So you could do all these things. I think you can even, I didn't show you. So if you click on this, you'll have the live visual tree here as well. So you can get this visual tree where it has like, you can also see the representation of the whole thing and how it's built up here. So you can see like shell content, main page, scroll view, right? So that's the thing that we've seen here, scroll view, vertical stack layout, and then the image label counter button. So you can kind of like spot like, okay, I'm nesting 5 layouts in each other. That's probably not good for performance, right? So you can see all that. And then whenever you click it, you will go to the XAML here as well, right? So it brings you to the right place so you can look at it. And I think you can even inspect like the live property editor, the live property explorer right here as well. So whenever you selected something, you can start playing with the properties here too and start changing things. So if you do text click me, don't click me, please, you can update it, and you can see that it updates here automatically too. And now we're running this thing on Android, and you can do the exact same thing. You can set breakpoints obviously in here, in the code behind, just like you're used to from any C#.NET project. You can set a breakpoint, you can hit it, you can inspect all the values here, and you can do all of that, but now on an Android device. You can also just connect your Android physical device, right? That will work the exact same way. It will show up in your Visual Studio thing here, and you can just deploy it like that. So super, super cool stuff. I'm going way over time. Okay, so let's get it on a little bit. Go back to the slide. So what is Blazor, right? Web development without JavaScript. That's always kind of like the joke that we have, right? Like we all hate JavaScript. But if you think about these rich single-page applications on the web, then you will think about this thing, right? Like all the cool sidebar, the dialogues, the grids, the graphs, the editors, all super great applications on the web. And then whenever you go to the same application on mobile, it will still work amazing. It will still look amazing, but the responsiveness has as a result that some like the side menu is now under this hamburger menu right here, but it still all looks mostly the same. It works the same. It is the same great experience. But if you think about these frameworks, then you automatically think about JavaScript frameworks. And I could joke here all day about like JavaScript, but obviously we're not here for that. But I'm not sure if there's not much good parts about it, right? So we automatically think about Angular, Vue, React, all these things, and they are all based on JavaScript, right? Like, and all kidding aside, I'm not here to hate on JavaScript. It's about like even if it's TypeScript or some other language, whenever you're working within .NET or C# or any other language, and you have to switch context to another language or another framework, that eats into your productivity, right? It's like, oh, how does it work again? I have to work with, I don't know, jQuery again. Is jQuery still a thing? And how do I do this thing again? You can ask Copilot now, which is really great, but still, you have to switch context. You have to ask the thing. You have to be like, oh, how does this work again? Look it up, etc., which is just not great. So then we came up with Blazor, right? You can build single page applications, but now still using C# and .NET. You can keep using C#. Can keep using the same tooling and IDE that you're used to, that you hopefully love, Visual Studio, Visual Studio Code, the consistent ecosystem, right? You do not have to download half of the internet with NPM packages. You can just now download a quarter of the internet in NuGet packages, which is much, much better. And .NET now exists for like, I don't know, 20 plus years. So there's a little bit of stability. There's a little bit of continuity there that you can count on, right? So that's why we came up with Blazor. And we have kind of like two variations that it started out with. I need to update these slides actually. We had Blazor Server and Blazor WebAssembly. And Blazor Server is more kind of like your traditional application where the heavy lifting is done on a server on the internet. And then your application will run there. And then in your browser, it's a single page application, right? So it only updates portions of your application. And through a Signal R connection, which is a library built by Microsoft as well, which is a abstraction over the real-time communication libraries that are available on the web. It will connect to your browser, to the server, and then send back and forth signals of like, oh, the user clicked on this, they changed this value. What do I need to update in the browser? And it will go and update your document object model, your browser, your web application. Blazor WebAssembly is more kind of like your JavaScript approach, where the whole application is downloaded to your browser. It can be the exact same code. Changing between these two modes is like very minimal code. Even with, I think as of .NET 8, you can just work with render modes, and you can have one page run on the server and the other page run on the client. So or let the application figure it out automatically. And then it runs on the browser inside of your client's machine on WebAssembly. WebAssembly is not something that Microsoft has invented. WebAssembly is an intermediate language. So JavaScript runs directly. WebAssembly is an intermediate language. So what we just did is make a compiler that would compile C# code and the C# runtime to WebAssembly and have that running in the browser. And now it all runs locally. It downloads your application. It can interact with your browser directly. It can run fully offline if that's what you want. So I'm not going to read all of this. You can read it very quickly for yourself. Whenever we have like different options, we will have pros and cons, right? And I think the important part is like near the bottom. Blazor Server requires a persistent internet connection, right? So you have that, no offline applications, and a higher UI latency. Even if your internet is so super fast, it will always be slower than whenever your application just interacts with your local machine, right? It will always have to make a round trip to the server and back, which is always slower than what's on your machine. And then for WebAssembly, you will have the larger download size, right? You will have to download the .NET runtime because that's how we work with .NET now. It has the entire .NET runtime. I think I don't have the numbers for the latest ones, but I think .NET 6 is like the .NET runtime is like 1 megabyte, right? So that's smaller than your average cat GIF, right? So, but it's still a 1 megabyte that gets added to your application, and then your whole application needs to be downloaded as well. So, and potentially a slower runtime performance, right? We don't know the machine that you're running on, so it might be a thin client, it might be a very beefy gaming machine, but it might have a slower runtime performance. It's hard to kind of like say. but you can create offline applications. You can do all these things. So depending on the scenario that you're doing, and again, with .NET 8, I think you have like streaming modes as well. So it will download the application as you navigate through it. It doesn't download it all in one go. There's all kinds of options to make this even better in more recent .NET versions. So now we have like all these different things. We have Blazor Hybrid on the Blazor on the server, Blazor in the WebAssembly, and then Blazor Hybrid we will see in a minute. I'm pretty sure that you've seen Blazor already, but very quickly, just to have this story kind of like full circle, let me very quickly show you, because that will be fun leading up to Blazor Hybrid. So let me quickly do File New Project here in Visual Studio, and now do a Blazor web app is what they call it now. And then I can click next. So I have it here in my recent templates, right? So if you would start it, it's not there. You can just look for Blazor and you will have a couple of different ones too. Blazor web app, Blazor server, Blazor WebAssembly. Again, it's relatively easy to switch between them. So don't worry if you pick the wrong one to start with. Just play with the one that you think that is the one that you need, and then you can kind of like go from there. And then we have the .NET MAUI Blazor hybrid one, and then the one that I explained just now, right? So we'll see that in a minute. I'm just going to go with, the Blazor web app for now. Next. Blazor app 2 sounds amazing. Solution, yeah, create new solution, sounds good. Again, you can select which framework, right? And here it actually says like LTS, STS, right? So that counts for Blazor. It doesn't count for .NET MAUI, even though it says long-term support and stuff there. Authentication type, right? Okay, you can automatically do some authentication in there. Configure for HTTPS, yes, we're not animals. Interactive render modes, right? So here you can already start playing with like, hey, make it auto, right? Let the application figure it out automatically. Set it to server, set it to WebAssembly. So basically this template is all in one, and you can select here, like, do you want to use server or WebAssembly? Interactivity location, it's all stuff that you will see later on, right? So don't worry about it. Let's just create and see what it brings us. This will create a new Blazor application, right? Some links here to go check it out. The documentation, absolutely do that if you're starting out with this. But here you can see the Blazor application, right? So not super complicated, program.cs, right? So that's our starting point. Again, that builder host app builder pattern, app host pattern, it has a fancy name. You can do that create builder right here, and then you can do builder services, add Razor components, which is needed for Blazor, right? Add interactive server components, builder.build, and again, also here exactly the same as you would do for Blazor. For .NET MAUI, you can say services.add singleton, right? You can add all of your oh, this is too bad. Wait, I wanted to do something else. You can add all your dependency injection in here. Okay, wait, let me create another one. I forgot an option, I think, which is going to be fun for the full example here. Include sample pages. Okay, that's the one I wanted. So here you can actually also enable kind of like the sample pages. So let me do that again. We get a little bit more body here. So if you look at the program CS, you can actually should see that it registers something in the dependency injection container, which it doesn't. Okay, so this is the exact same builder app.run. Cool. What do we get extra here is the components, and then we have like the roots, right? So what Blazor does is kind of like it scans the assembly of this application, and then it picks up on the routes. I don't know what the proper pronunciation is, depending on if you're on the US or UK or everywhere else. It will scan these routes, which are here in the pages. So you can say home, which is at page /. So whenever there's no address provided, it will just go to this home. But this is the thing that will be scanned by this roots.razor and will be indexed. And whenever we go to this /weather, we will get this whole thing, right? So we will get that page, and then you can go kind of like guess, hey, whenever we go to the counter, we can have this thing, right? So it does all of that. And then we have some other things surrounding that as well. And then in a www root, it needs to be served by kind of like the HTML page. Hey, where's that one? We need to have like the interesting an HTML page to kind of like bootstrap this to actually show. Because in the end, your browser is still going to show HTML, right? And it needs to load the Blazor application inside of there, and it will all translate to kind of like HTML. Because you can see we're mixing and matching, right? Like whenever you see this @ sign, which in Dutch is apenstaartje, right? Super cool. whenever you see this add sign, you make the connection with kind of like the C# world. So add code, and now you can write C# code, right? But you can also just see like, hey, this is HTML tags, right? Button, class, and then you do the bootstrap, because bootstrap is provided out of the box as well. So you could do all these bootstrap classes. So you can get the responsiveness for free as well. And then you see this add sign right here on click, and you can connect that with an event handler, which you can find right here. And you don't have to do any JavaScript for that. You can just use C# and .NET. But you can see another tag right here, which is page title, which is a tag helper, if I'm remembering correctly, which is a specific Blazor thing. And this will help set the title in kind of like your browser, so that you don't have to go through all kinds of layers to get to your master page and kind of like set the title there, right? So we have this page title because everything is wrapped inside of like this main layout that we have defined right here, right? So you can see here, like this is wrapped for everything. And then here we render the add body, and that's the only thing that's going to get rendered here, right? And then we have the HTML surrounding that, but I'm not sure where the HTML page is hiding right now. So I'm not sure how that kind of like works these days. I need to figure that out. Okay, and whenever we run this, you can see the same run menu here, but now we have HTTPS. So whenever I start running this here, it will spin up a little server process, right? Because this needs to be served by a web server. Because even if it's like static files and HTML things, we need a web server. But even more if it's like an interactive web page that actually goes back and forth, sending these signals and telling us what to update in the browser with our HTML. So this is our little server process right here. And then we get a browser window with the actual application, which you can see here, which just says hello world. A counter is probably apparently a thing in new Microsoft products, new Microsoft templates, so you can increment things here. And then we have this little weather thing right here, which kind of like mimics some weather report that is showing right here for the upcoming couple of days. And the cool thing is, this is all C#, .NET, no JavaScript needed. Again, I can set breakpoints right here to do this thing. So I can go back to the counter, I can click me, it hits the breakpoint, I can inspect all these things. I can continue running. We also have like hot reload also here, I think. So if you do not plus plus, but plus is 10, whoops, 10, and we save that, I click the little icon right here. It reloads these code changes automatically. And whenever I start clicking now, it should increment by 10, right? So it just, while I'm debugging, I can change code. It will pick that up and do this stuff, which is really, really cool. Again, saves you from keeping to make some changes, deploy, and then figure out that, oh, it's still not right. So you can just change it here as we go. Let's change this back. Cool. Okay, that's really quick what Blazor is. And now I think on to the main event, which is going to be interesting, to Blazor Hybrid. Cool. So .NET MAUI plus Blazor, the best of both worlds. We're going to watch this very cool animation that took me way too long to create here in PowerPoint. So thank you. I can hear you're clapping, you're applauding there from a distance. It took me way too long to actually create this. Okay, cool. So now we have Blazor running on all these devices through the web, bringing you C# and .NET, to every browser in the world. We have .NET MAUI on the other side, bringing C# and .NET natively to all these devices, because we now have the .NET runtime running on all of these platforms: iOS, macOS, Windows, iPadOS, and Android. The Android logo keeps disappearing. It's not because I hate Android. I'm honest. But if you put these two things together, then what could we do, right? So if we have Blazor and .NET MAUI, we have the power to do everything on all devices, all browsers, everywhere, right? And that's why we came up with Blazor Hybrid. Because we've seen a lot of XAML. Maybe you don't like XAML. Maybe you are like, oh, this Blazor syntax is much, much cooler with all the add signs and mixing that all together. And I have this existing Blazor application already on the web. I want to reuse code with that, but still have the icon in the App Store. That's totally something that you can do with all of this. So what exactly is Blazor Hybrid? Blazor Hybrid is an extension of Blazor, the third option to go with Blazor Server, Blazor WebAssembly, Blazor Hybrid, built on top of .NET 8. I need to update this, of course, also .NET 9, .NET 10, and .NET MAUI, implemented through a Blazor WebView control to host and render Blazor Web UI. So what this does, whenever we create a project for this, it's basically just a .NET MAUI app that has a full screen Blazor WebView. Blazor WebView is just another control, like the button, like the label that we've just seen. And you can choose if your whole application is going to be a Blazor WebView and you're going to build your whole application as a Blazor application. You can absolutely do that. We have projects in the store. We have showcases on the Microsoft website that are doing that. You can also say, I have this one Blazor component, this one little thing that is very specific. I want to use that, but all the rest of the layout should be native, and just this one thing should be a Blazor widget. You can do that too. Just make your Blazor web view a tiny thing inside of your layout and just use that as a Blazor thing. You can interop with all the other things around it, and just reuse that one component. It's all up to you. So with .NET MAUI Blazor, you can build cross-platform native apps that run on Windows, macOS, iOS, and Android, right? Not coincidentally, all the platforms that we're supporting with .NET MAUI. You can reuse your existing Razor class libraries. So Razor class libraries are basically the DLLs for Razor, for Blazor. I skipped over it just now. I can just switch back really quickly. Here you can see like it's all .razor, right? And every .razor file can basically be used. Everything is a component in Razor, so in Blazor. So if I would take this, actually you can see it. Can you see it? Well, let me just create something really quickly here. If I do add, you actually have an option here, Razor component, right? And if I say, call this my button, there we go. Now, boom, we have my button. And now I can just go in here to my counter.razor, and instead of this button, I could say my button, because the name for the tag will simply be the file name of your Razor file. So I can just create this component. Boom, I created a component, right? And you can make it more reusable by making property settable from the outside. So I can here say title is whatever, and you can do all of that. And now I can reuse it in multiple places inside of my project. But what I could also do is place it in a separate DLL in a Razor class library, and now I can share it across platforms. Projects, sorry. And then I take it into a NuGet, and now I can share it with the world, and everyone can use it in their project, right? So you can create these reusable components. You can buy reusable components from Telerik and Syncfusion and all the other vendors out there, and you can just use them on your Blazor web application, but also in your Blazor Hybrid application. Doesn't matter, you don't need to change anything. Yes, if you're going to write to disk or whatever, then it gets a little bit complicated. Then you need to differentiate between like web and Blazor Hybrid. But other than that, you should be able to reuse these class libraries. And you can have full platform device access. If you're running your Blazor web application, you're bound to the browser sandbox, right? Luckily, so that if you don't go to the wrong website, then your hard drive gets formatted. That's not something that we want. The good news is if you're building a Blazor hybrid application, you totally can format someone's hard drive, right? So that's kind of like the difference. And you're still bound to the application sandbox from iOS and Android, right? You can't just go out and do everything there. There's like very restrictions there too, and you need to declare permissions for notifications and geolocations and all that kind of stuff. You definitely need to do that, which is a good thing for your users. But other than that, you can write to the file system. You can access the flashlight. You can access the geolocation. You can do all these things on the platform, which you might not be able to do on the browser. A little bit of Mythbusters. Blazor Hybrid runs 100% natively in one process, specifically iOS, but also Android. Do not allow us to spin up a little server, a little web server in the background, and then serve a little Blazor application, Blazor web application, and basically make your application a mini browser. They don't allow that, right? It has to be like one process and all kinds of crazy rules, again, especially for iOS. And we already have the .NET runtime running on all of these platforms. And Blazor is just running as a .NET application. So we can just let that .NET application run on the .NET runtime directly on that platform. We don't need to go through WebAssembly. We don't need to go through Blazor server. We can just run it as a .NET application. No HTTP requests, unless, of course, you're going out to an API, some REST API where you get your data, like the weather service or whatever. But, you know, no browser sandbox, no network required if you don't want to. You can build a totally offline application with this if that's what you want. So the only thing that you're doing with this is basically replacing all that XAML and the native components with Blazor, with HTML and CSS. You are only rendering HTML and CSS with this. That's basically the only thing that you're changing, that little UI layer. And with that, if you're using Bootstrap, you can use another thing, Tailwind CSS. I'm not super familiar with all that stuff in the web world. You can pull that in if you want, and you will get all the responsiveness and everything that comes with that on your device as well. We'll see that in a minute. For .NET MAUI, you will have to do a little bit of work manually to make it all responsive and nice and work okay across the different viewports. If you're using Bootstrap in there, that will come automatically. If you have your device like this, it will show all right. It will have the menu collapse and everything. If you turn it like to landscape, suddenly it has enough screen real estate to show the menu dedicated, so it will do that for you automatically, right? So you get that stuff a little bit for free, but it won't be native components. So again, depending on your requirements, what you want to do. So let's see a little bit of a demo for that as well. So again, I'm going to create a new project right here. And now I'm going to do that .NET MAUI Blazor Hybrid app. Not a whole lot of new options. Again, that includes sample pages. That's going to include the exact same sample pages that we've just seen for Blazor. So just so you can see, what basically happened is like, hey, we had the Blazor template, we had the .NET MAUI template, and we said like, boom, we're going to put them together, and this is our Blazor hybrid template, basically. Because also, if you're going to look here now, you can see like, hey, we have those platforms, we have those resources that we've seen for a .NET MAUI app, but we also have the components that we saw in the Blazor template, right? So we have the exact same pages. We have all these things that you're familiar with now. We have the main layout, the counter, the home, which has actually the exact same content as well. Whoops, the exact same content, right? We can see that route right here. We can see this thing, a button, the increment count, right? We can have all these things. And we even have that routes.razor, right? We still need to bootstrap that. But what we also see is the MAUI program. Okay, still the same thing. You can see that we've added a little thing to initialize the Blazor web view right here. So if you want to use your Blazor web view inside of your .NET MAUI application, you need a little bit of configuration here, or just start with this template. But we only have like one main page right now, and that main page does not show the little .NET bot with the hovercraft, but it has that Blazor web view. Right, so we have this one Blazor web view. This template shows you the full Blazor web view across the whole device, and we're going to build our application with Blazor. But again, you can change your layout. Do I have time? Oh, my watch even died. Oh, we have maybe a little bit of time to actually show you to make it one piece of the application. And this just, Blazor web view, this is the only example that you have to see. If you want to, we're going to point that to the routes.razor, and from there it bootstraps the whole Razor thing, and you can write everything in Razor if that's what you want, including this index HTML right here. Right, we have it in this template. I don't know why it disappeared on the other one, but we have it right here. And then this here, you can see ID is app loading. This is where select your app. This is where your Blazor application kind of like gets injected, if you will. Now, if we run this for effect, let's run this on Android again. So let's do it here. It's already running still. Let's deploy it there. You will see basically the exact same application that we just saw running in the browser, but now running natively on an Android device, on Windows, on iOS, if we would deploy it there. And still using C# and .NET, but now you can do your layouting in HTML. You can pull in your existing Grace class libraries and use all of that there. While this is loading, let me actually go to what I said just now, mixing and matching .NET MAUI with Blazor. I think, in real life, that would be super useful. So right now, this is a content page. If I would change this to a tabbed page, which is something that's built into .NET MAUI as well, it's going to complain about this because, actually, why? Oh, right, because we cannot add components directly to this page. We need to add more pages because we're just going to have tabs for Android. They're going to be at the top, I think. And each tab is going to be a page, right? So we are going to move the content page to this thing right here. We can give it a title as it suggested right here, which is going to be, I don't know, let's make this counter. Let's do that. And then I'm going to have another content page. Actually, let's make this Blazor. Wait, let's work up to it. Let's make this Blazor. I'm going to take this Blazor web view, put it in here, and then I can create another content page. And here, I can just do a label, right? I can just do a .NET MAUI label. I can just do a button with a text. Click me again. Click me. There we go. Oh, actually, I should wrap this then in a vertical stack layout, right? I should start writing .NET MAUI stuff in here right now. And you can see, like, hey, the one page is going to be Blazor, and then the other page, title, is going to be MAUI, right? So now I can mix and match between the two things. It doesn't make sense to write out the whole pages right here. You would probably bring in like pages from other XAML files right here. But this way you can start mixing and matching. hold the thought. This is the running from before, like the tabs and whatever. So this is just your plain Blazor Hybrid template right here. And you can see like, hey, we have the same menu, we have the counter, click me works the same thing. And we have that weather forecast right here. You can see it's responsive. Whenever I put it into landscape, whoops, it should go automatically. And you can see like, hey, it automatically sees like, okay, I have now more space and I could just show that bar here on the left, right? So that's kind of like how it works. That responsiveness comes for free. Cool. So we got that. If I now redeploy it, which should be pretty fast, as I promised that the kind of like incremental deploys should be faster, but it gives me an error, which is totally scripted. Oh, there we go. Yeah, I changed the tab page right here. Like I said, mainpage.xaml always has a code behind, so we also have a mainpage.xaml.cs, where you also specify the base class. So this, you can see it's a partial class, right? So the partial is like, we can have a class that's spread out over multiple files, and in this case, it's going to be the XAML part is part of the class, and then our code part is also part of the class. And you can say, you can still see the content page here, which should be a tabbed page. However, if it's a partial class, we only need to specify this in one place. So a little pro tip right here, just remove this and never bother with updating it again. We specified in XAML, we don't need it here again, right? Perfect. If you've learned one thing this evening from this presentation, this should be it. Okay, so now it just deploys, and whenever we come up now, we should see tabs. And again, the tab page is rendered natively by .NET MAUI. If you know of any HTML, CSS, whatever package to render tabs as well and do it that way, you want to do it all in Blazor, absolutely be my guest if that's what you want to do. But this renders the tabs as they should look like on Android. You can see them right here, and I can switch to MAUI, and you can see, hey, it's very minimalistic design. I always do very minimalistic designs because I'm a terrible designer. You can see this is actually MAUI native components, and here we have that full Blazor application again, right? So this is just our Blazor web view, and I can mix and match. One page should be MAUI, one page should be Blazor. Perfect. But I can hear you ask all the way there, what if it doesn't make sense to load that whole Blazor application in here, right? So what we can do then is take it even a step further and not here say component type x type local.routes, so not point it to that little routes component right there, but we can do XML and S. So you need to learn a little bit about XAML. This is basically your using statement in XAML right here. And I can say pages is, and then I'm going to do pages. We already have that here. MAUI app components pages. So this is the namespace in C#, right? So if I look at like, well, actually, I can't really see it here, but you should know in C# and .NET, it's typical that the files, the namespaces follow the file convention. So right here, you can see MAUI app 6, which is our project, components, the file structure follows the namespace, pages, and this is going to be our name page where namespace where I can find our pages, right? So they're right here. So I imported that here and now can access these through pages. So I cannot say local right here, but I can say pages. And you could see counter, home, and weather, right? So those are the three pages that I have right here in this namespace. And let's make this counter like this. So here I come back to what I was doing earlier, counter. And I can now duplicate this one if I wanted to. And let's put that at the end so that we have like a nice MAUI sandwich. And I can make this the weather and make this the weather. Yes, thank you, Copilot. See, super useful. And what I need to do, we have this X name, right? So that's what generates a variable in the C# code behind. And now we have a duplicate name, which can happen. So that would be another build error, which is totally scripted. But let's just name it Blazor WebView 1 just to avoid that naming collision. And what we should have now is this Blazor WebView that points directly to a page in our Blazor application. So now I should have one tab that has the counter page. I should have one tab that is MAUI native. I should have one tab that points to the weather in our Blazor application. See? So we got all that. MAUI, weather. See, without the extra bar, because then you would have like, the tab bar here and then the bar from our Blazor application, which would be kind of like awkward. So now we don't have that, and we point directly to a page in our Blazor application. Note, if you're going to use this, you're not pointing to that routes object anymore. So you will lose your ability to say navigation manager. I think it's in Blazor navigation manager.goto or whatever it is in Blazor. it will not know how to figure out to go to another page. So you need to take into account that you need to do the navigation another way. So you'll lose that because you're not pointing to that routes object anymore, but you can point directly to Blazor pages right here. Cool, cool, cool. Okay, couple of slides to wrap up. We're almost there. We're almost there. We got this full build out sample for you ready to go, which shows you not only MAUI, not only Blazor, but also the whole architecture, all the microservices, all the cool things behind there, which you can find here, which we call the eShop, github.com/.net/eShop. It has a full sample that you can deploy to your own Azure account if that's what you want. Please don't forget to turn it off because then you'll run out of your Azure credits really soon, or it will cost a lot of money. But what's really cool is that this will have a website that's built with Blazor, and then it will have a mobile app that is built with .NET MAUI, but also with Blazor Hybrid. So you can kind of like see the difference and how you share code between the two and all those things there. It's a very big code base, so it will take a little while to find your way, but it can be super helpful to kind of like see how you can share code between them and how that all would be architected in a very close to real world scenario. So anything else? Well, whenever I talk about these things, then questions will come up will be like, when should I use .NET MAUI Blazor, right? When or should I use it at all? Should I use? You can maybe see that this is the point where I started to design my own slides, right? Again, minimalistic design, right? I'm not sure what gave it away exactly, but maybe you can notice. When or should I use .NET MAUI, right? What's the scenarios there? Or when should I use Blazor, right? And the answer, like everything with software development, is it depends, right? It all depends on your requirements, your pre-existing knowledge, what you enjoy doing, right? Like your luck in life is also very important. If you're a web developer and you want to get into cross-platform, you want to build for mobile devices, then Blazor Hybrid is a great venue to kind of like do that. If you have an existing Blazor application inside of your company, or you have an existing one and you want to share code with a native application, this could be something for you. Maybe you have that legacy application, because I didn't mention that, but the Blazor web view is not only implemented for .NET MAUI, but also for WinForms and WPF. So if you have a WinForms and WPF app in the company that you're working at, and you want to modernize it from the inside out, make sure that you get up to at least .NET 6. Then you have that Blazor web view. You can use that in your application, just like I showed you inside of your .NET MAUI application, and you could start building Blazor applications from there, start modernizing your application from the inside out, or just because you can, because it's a random Tuesday night and you're like, I don't know what to do. I'm going to build some amazing application and learn some cool stuff today. So .NET offers a wide choice for all developers, right? Like if you want to go for reach, if you want to reach every person with a browser on their device, whether that's their watch or their refrigerator or their monitor, their smart TV, I don't know, build something with Blazor, right? You can also build something else like a website or progressive web app, do it in all kinds of other frameworks, but that will take you to all the devices in the world that will have access to a web browser. If you need a little bit more power than that, and you also need access to the sensors, the geolocation, all that kind of stuff, you can use Blazor and .NET MAUI, right? You can use that hybrid approach. And if you really want to be on the performance, use the stuff that is designed for the platform that you're running on, you should go with .NET MAUI. Or again, if you are ever only going to build a Windows application, you can go with WPF, you can go with WinUI, but just choose the framework that is built for that platform. You will have first day access to Liquid Glass, first day access to all the new APIs, and it will be the performant framework for that platform. All right, that was all I have for you today. So thank you so much for joining. If you want to learn more, please don't forget to like and subscribe on my YouTube channel. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them now or find me on any of the social media channels and ask them later. Thank you so much. Isaac, yes, please go ahead. Oh, I'm sharing this. Yeah, doesn't matter.
Okay.
Thank you, Joanna. Mustafa.
Thank you so much for the presentation. It was amazing. Really learned a lot. And I have a couple of questions here with me. So first one is, how does MAUI handle state management? with like it maybe like the components on the screen, the controls themselves. So like how does it handle state management for all the controls? If that's even a thing in MAUI.
Not something that's necessarily built in. If you need something like that, then you will have to build your own or find a library that does this. Other than that, like, there is just the cycle, lifetime life cycle things. So, as long as a page does not get destroyed, it will just retain its state, right? So as long as there's a reference to it, like if you have that tab page, whenever you go to one of the other tabs, it will have that page open, and as long as it doesn't get destroyed because there's like it's running out of memory or whatever, if you go back, it will just have that exact same state. But there's nothing built in that will help you automatically with that, other than it will just be there as long as it's not destroyed, basically.
Okay, great. That answers the question. If no one has a question, I have a couple of more questions. The next question. Is there a what's this an render engine or like for graphics, like UI graphics? Maybe like 3D graphics. Maybe my application I have to have like maybe 3D graphics of like maybe I don't know shoes or something or some I don't know icons or maybe like I'm creating a game and I decide to use like MAUI. So yeah, is there like an engine I could use the way
Yeah,
Flutter comes with like the impeller or something like that?
yeah, absolutely. I think we have. Ooh, someone else asked me this question. Wait, let me share my screen a little bit more. I think Peter, you had a question too. I'll get back to that in a little bit. Let me share this and see if I can find a browser window that does not have anything embarrassing on it. There we go. Someone asked me the other day. Oh, sorry, I use Bing, of course, Bing. I think it was Evergine. They have something for .NET MAUI, which is like a more real 3D engine to render 3D models and all that kind of stuff. But what we also have, like I already mentioned, so this is like real 3D. What I also mentioned was the MAUI graphics, right? So we have the kind of like overlay where you can draw more simple graphics. So this is more like your squares and lines and whatever, do image manipulation if that's what you want. But we also have Skia Sharp, right? So I think that's also technically something from Google, but this also works with .NET MAUI. So you can have this Skia Sharp engine where you can draw all these things, and I'm pretty sure that there's controls built with this. So if you there's absolutely also people who are like, I want to have drawn controls for .NET MAUI as well, and I think we have this partnership with Syncfusion since a while, since I think almost a year now. And they have a free MAUI toolkit with a bunch of controls too. And I think most of these are drawn through Skia Sharp as well. So this control, and I know for sure for like the data visualization, so the charts, so they will show up the exact same on all the platforms simply because they are drawn through Skia Sharp. And I'm also very sure that we have full games going through Skia Sharp and whatever. You also have Doom Sharp, I think, um, which is a full Doom clone. The game Doom doesn't have any screenshots. Running through C Sharp, and they also have it running on mobile devices through MAUI, right? So Windows and Android, they have it running through MAUI as well. So loads of options to kind of like do rendering, graphics rendering, build full games if that's what you want with that in MAUI. Absolutely.
Okay.
Pe-
Uh
Peter, you had your hand up for a little bit just there. Peter, if you still want to ask a question before Isaac asks all the questions. Did we in the settings can other people not unmute? Allow mic. Here, I'm allowing the mic, Peter, for you.
yeah,
So
they
if you want
can.
something to ask.
Oh, the question
Okay.
was the same. It
Oh.
was also about rendering.
Okay. Oh, it was also about rendering. Okay, perfect. Isaac is a mind reader who knows what everyone wants to ask.
Yeah. Last question from me. Is there a way to still deploy on devices, maybe via Bluetooth without a connection cable, like a data cable or something? Maybe I can deploy via Bluetooth, maybe I scan a code or something, the way React Native does it. Is there like something like that?
Honestly, I didn't know that about React Native. That's very interesting. I know iOS has a way to deploy wirelessly, but again, I think you will need the actual Mac for that. And that's something that's built into kind of like iOS and Mac deployment. So we can use that. We can use everything that is available on the native platforms and the native tooling, right? Like at the end of the day, it's going to be a native app. So every tooling, also like the profiler, memory profiler, performance profiling, all the tools that you could use on a native application, you can use with the .NET MAUI app as well, because it's going to be a native application. We don't have anything built ourselves to kind of like wirelessly deploy to things. If something is available for that on Android or iOS, you can absolutely do it. You can use that. I've seen it work. We don't necessarily have much documentation on it. The easiest way absolutely is to just plug in a cable and deploy it like that. But if there are options to kind of like wirelessly deploy it through the native tooling, then you absolutely can do that for .NET MAUI apps as well.
Okay, great. Maybe I give a chance to other people to ask before I ask my final question.
Ooh, the final question. Maybe I'm pretty sure, because I looking at these icons, you can still see the screen, right? Like I can see it has a little forbidden icon, so I'm pretty sure, except Peter, who I just kind of like allowed, so I'm pretty sure that you cannot unmute yourself. It's probably somewhere in the settings. If you have a question, put your hand up. I will allow you to speak. I have so much power. If not, that's fine too. You're on the spot now. I understand that. Now I'm intrigued where the setting is. Meeting info. Oh, no one has any questions, so I'm not gonna bother. Okay, cool. Isaac, give me your final question.
Okay, so from checking out your website last time when you
Stop,
shared the
stop,
link.
stop, stop.
Oh,
Stop.
okay,
I'm sorry.
okay,
Oh,
okay.
cliffhanger. Harrison. Oh, allow Mike. There we go. Harrison, go. You want to do the camera too? That's up to you. You don't have to. Allow. Okay, do what you want. You do need to unmute. Yep. I don't hear you. Harrison, speak. You can do it. We're not hearing you. I'm sorry. Type in the chat. Can you type in the chat? Can you type in the Q&A? Can you type anywhere? Can you do a thing? Mute participant. Oh, I heard a sound. Oh, that was Isaac. Isaac is making noise. I don't know how to change the settings, or if I can. I'm sorry, Harrison, I can't hear you. Reach out to Isaac if you can, if you know him, or to me directly if it's a question that you want to get answered. Mustafa too. Maybe Mustafa is right next to Harrison.
Harrison, you can send the message. You can send the question to me, and I can ask for you. Yeah, if you don't have access to your mic.
Mustafa gave you access to your microphone as well. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing anyone's name incorrectly. I'm sorry.
Thank you very much. Am I audible?
There we go.
Am I
Yes, I can hear
audible?
you.
Okay, thank you
Yes.
very much. I would like to ask you, like, I am working with Blazor quite a long period of time. I'm checking, like, would you please suggest me like where I can find more tutorial about the Blazor Hybrid? So I'm just searching. I didn't find any good resource through which I can actually build my team with this technology.
Cool.
I'm especially looking for Blazor Hybrid. Thank you very much.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So, of course, I don't know what you found already. Let me just shamelessly self-promote myself. So if you go to my YouTube channel, I think actually, oh, stop. I have this full course right here from like 4 hours. So I don't know if you found that one. I talked you through it. You can also just go here. This URL that's linked in the video description. So if you go to the video, we'll get advertisements, blah, blah. You can find the link right here, aka.ms Blazor Hybrid Workshop. That will take you to a GitHub repository, which basically has the full workshop that I go through in the video as well. And I will tell you all the things, but you can go through this yourself if you don't like the video. If you've had enough of me talking, I can understand that. And you can just go through all the parts, because all the parts will have a very extensive README with screenshots, so you can just follow along this way and do all the steps yourself. So you can do it yourself. You can follow the video if that's what you want. Yeah, this is what I've been working on. I think that might be, we probably have like something in the documentation as well, or some learn path or something. I'm not entirely sure. Discover, maybe it's actually part of this repository too. If we go back here. Oh, there we go. So if you go back to this workshop that I linked right here, can you read the chat or not? I don't know. I'm just gonna put it in here. Maybe you can read it. Down at the very bottom, there's more links and resources. So we have this links to learn.microsoft.com. So all the documentation is here. We have another beginner series here. I think this is James, probably. Yeah, this is James, has a bunch of videos here talking you through the same things as well. And then like .NET MAUI stuff. So the interesting thing is Blazor Hybrid is kind of like interesting. If you're looking for something specific, if you don't have a ton of experience, I can understand that it might be a little bit confusing sometimes. Like if is something on the Blazor side, is something on the .NET MAUI side. But try to kind of like guess, like, is this something for Blazor? And try to kind of like use your search engine or Copilot or whatever, and be like, hey, how do I solve this in Blazor? Or how do I solve this in .NET MAUI? Chances are that you're going to find that thing, and it will be the exact same thing in Blazor. Like, if you're going to use geolocation, that code is the exact same in .NET MAUI as it is in Blazor, right? So if you're going to look at this very specific thing, just look for how the solution is in Blazor or .NET MAUI, and chances are that you will be able to apply it to your Blazor Hybrid project as well. And other than that, hopefully this tutorial, not specifically Blazor Hybrid, but for Blazor, not to just promote only Microsoft, because, for Microsoft, there's a lot of also like, oh, we do amazing stuff. I believe we do amazing stuff, but for some people, there's also some marketing in there sometimes. So from the community, there's also Jimmy Engstrom. Not this one. That's interesting. There's another person who with the same name, but I'm talking about this one. Who has Don't Train courses, who has videos on YouTube. He has written a couple of books, and all about Blazor. So this is Blazor specific. He mentions Blazor Hybrid here and there, but he's like very good on the Blazor stuff as well. So definitely go check him out to really get into the Blazor stuff. And for the .NET MAUI side, like follow me, follow James Montemagno. The Discord that I mentioned earlier to ask questions and stuff, mauiverse.net/Discord. So go here, get on the Discord. We're all super helpful. We will drop in links to blogs, links to whatever you can ask questions there. So do all that things. I hope that hopefully answers your question a little bit. If you need more resources or have a very specific thing about Blazor Hybrid, let me know and I will find you some resource that you can look at. Mapalo. Allow mic, allow camera, do all the things. You should be able to unmute, say something if you want. No, maybe. Apollo, unmute. I don't know if you're talking. You're still muted. I've allowed you to unmute, but it didn't actually unmute you. Can I? No, I can't. That would be weird. All right. Well, ask your question another way. Send it to Isaac. Yes or no?
Yeah. Harrison actually sent in a question.
Oh, there we go. Yep.
Yeah. So Harrison was asking, are there any repos, public repos that he can reference to learn more about the .NET MAUI and Blazor Hybrid, and projects that he can reference and learn from as well? Then the next question is, for someone starting out to build a project or an app firsthand or for the first time, what would you recommend starting with? Diving into Blazor Hybrid or just native MAUI? So those are the two questions from Harrison.
Yep. Okay. So besides the workshop that I just mentioned, I also have this repository, learn.net MAUI, which is maybe mostly comparable to the other repositories that you might know of, like Awesome, this and that list. But I opted for learn.net MAUI. And here I tried to gather like all the resources out there, right? Like blogs, books. So if we go to books, like you can see there's a good number of people writing books about .NET MAUI code, right? So I have like components, component vendors. We have other lists in here, like Javier, who's on the .NET MAUI team, has a repository where he tries to gather like, hey, this is real life apps or projects out there with a cool design that you can look at for inspiration, right? So we have all these designs with links to GitHub repositories that you can look at. Some of them are Blazor, some of them are .NET MAUI, so you can look into those as well. Extensions that are out there, and then all kinds of libraries that are out there, right? So got a whole list of things right here that you can look at. Services, social media, so notable social media accounts, videos, YouTube accounts, etc., etc. Got a whole index here. So this tries to link to all kinds of things and resources that you might look at. Again, I don't know if you can find all these links, but else Isaac will make sure that you'll get all of these. So that's one. The other, so this workshop that I just showed you for like the starting with .NET MAUI thing, this is the Blazor Hybrid one. You could follow this workshop as is. You will learn everything you need to. You could also take 2 days. Well, this is, if you go through it a little bit quickly, it could be done in 4 hours, as we've seen in the video. There's also one for .NET MAUI, where you don't use hybrid, where you don't use Blazor or Blazor Hybrid. So if you're looking to dive deeper into .NET MAUI as well, we have a very similar workshop for that too, which can be found here. Same kind of like URL here. But this focuses on building the exact same application actually as the other workshop, but now with only .NET MAUI. So you can really compare the two approaches there as well. And you can see where the differences are, where the similarities are. And again, this follows the exact same pattern with like the parts. You can go through them with the extensive readmes. James has recorded a video for this on his YouTube. So he has a, oops. Go to the other link. So he has like a 4-hour video for this one as well. Yeah, blah, blah, advertisements. So he has a 4-hour video for this one. If you go to my YouTube channel again, I've separated it out into multiple videos. So I got this playlist right here for like, hey, learn to build your first .NET MAUI app. And you can see like, hey, I have like 10 videos of like, I don't know, something each, where I take you through the workshop there. Again, I'm sorry, I'm distracted by my own voice here in my ear. So there's that. Do I then recommend going Blazor Hybrid or .NET MAUI? I personally, but this is very personal, like apps that are native. It just responds a little bit better. It takes some effort to make your Blazor Hybrid, the web and the CSS, really act and feel like a native application. People will almost always tell. So if you're going to build an app for like consumers that you're going to release to everyone in the world, they are very picky. Build a native app, right? Like just learn .NET MAUI, use native components. That will bring you the furthest way there for a good review in the store, etc., just because it feels so much better. But you know, if you want to just start out and start playing with things to get a feel for mobile development, cross-platform development, start with Blazor Hybrid. If you know a little bit about web already, web is a little bit easier to kind of like start with. So just to get the hang of like, hey, what does it take to start with mobile cross-platform development? How does the emulator work? How does all the mobile APIs work? Blah, blah, blah. It all very much depends on the pre-existing knowledge that you might have, where you want to go with it, what you enjoy most doing. So I hope that's somewhat helpful. Yeah.
Yes. That's all on the questions that I have. Unless Mapalo has sent something. So, oh yeah, Mapalo is asking, how can how can you have animations and transitions if that's possible in .NET MAUI? Adding transitions and animations in an application?
Yeah, so animations we have kind of like depends on what you want to do exactly, right? So animations, we have APIs for that, so you can do all kinds of animations on all the controls, all the things out there. You can absolutely do that. That's all there. For transitions between pages, it's a little bit harder. I think there are some libraries out there that do it. We don't really have anything built in right now to kind of like make that very easy for you, but you can absolutely do it. For anything that you would like to see, go to .NET/MAUI, sorry, github.com/.NET/MAUI. Don't be scared by the number of issues we have there. That's always something that comes up of like, oh, there's so many bugs and things. The number of issues open is a very bad metric for any project. If we go to .NET Runtime, you'll see that there's many, many more. See? And are we not using the .NET Runtime? I mean, it's still pretty stable, right? Or if you look at like, I again, no disrespect to our competitors, but if you go to Flutter, right, like it's not much different there, right? They have 11,000 open issues. So is that then suddenly bad? I don't think so. A lot of people love Flutter. A lot of people love .NET MAUI. So don't look at the open issues, but chances are that you can find one issue that's already describing what you want, transitions through pages. If you can find anything that you're like, hey, this describes what I want, open a new issue. For a feature request, try to add as much detail as possible. With issues and feature requests that are just like, I want to see transitions in pages, we're never going to be able to implement that, right? Because we don't know what to build. We don't know what you'd like to see. That will not ignite any discussion between people of like, yes, but I also want to see this or that. Like if we would want to even consider like a feature or something like that, we would need as much detail as possible for like, hey, we want to build what you need, right? So we want to know, we can't look into your mind because only Isaac can do that. He knows what questions you want to ask. We can't do that. We don't know what you want, what you're looking at, what your project looks like, what your requirements are. So please add as much detail as possible to all these things, so that we can have a little discussion and see if it's something that we can start implementing, yes or no. That's the only thing that I can recommend. Long answer for a short answer that no, we don't have any transitions, but we do have a lot of stuff for animations built in right now.
Oh, okay, great.
Is it
No,
finally
I was
time for the
thinking,
final question?
yeah, I think so. Okay. Checking out on your website, I noticed you were once I don't know if you still are. You are a Microsoft MVP, yeah. So how can one become an MVP, a Microsoft MVP? So like, what does it take to get there? You know, yeah.
Good question.
That's
So
my last question.
perfect. Microsoft MVP is you cannot be a Microsoft employee and Microsoft MVP at the same time. So I was a Microsoft MVP before I joined Microsoft. And then whenever you become an employee, then you're automatically not an MVP anymore. Because I don't know, it's MVP is an award that you get for community contributions. And now basically these contributions are part of my work. Although I'm standing here doing presentations in my time off, in my vacation, but oh well, it's part of my job, right? I love doing it, so that's fine. MVP.microsoft.com, that's basically where you can find most of the information there. We got a couple of different flavors. You can also be a student ambassador if you're still kind of like on university or whatever. MVP is the most people that are kind of like, value these sort of things. And then you have regional directors, which is a very businessy thing. Not super interesting if you ask me. MVPs, people very simply put, like again, there's lots of descriptions here. Very simply put, these are people that are passionate about Microsoft technologies. It can be .NET MAUI, it can be SharePoint, it can be Power Apps, it can be AI, obviously. It can be Office 365, everything within Microsoft can be a thing. And you love sharing about that. That can be through blogging, that can be through doing sessions, writing code, contributing to the ecosystem, doing social media, organizing great events like this, in-person events, as long as you're not paid to do it, as long as it's not your job, right? It should be something that you do for free, that you do kind of like out of love for the community, helping others, that kind of thing. Then the MVP title is something that you get for your contributions in the past 12 months, so over the last year. And whatever you're like, I don't know, maybe I am someone who thinks like, okay, I'm doing pretty well. I might be considered for this award. But typically, which is even more noble, of course, is that your contributions have gotten the attention of another MVP or Microsoft employee, then they can nominate you. So there was a time where you could nominate yourself. Anyone could do a nomination. You cannot do that anymore. It has to be a Microsoft employee or another Microsoft employee. Another Microsoft MVP that needs to nominate you right now. And they will usually talk to you a little bit like, hey, what have you done in the past 12 months, right? Like, and maybe we should work a little bit more on this, a little bit more on that. Maybe you should do a little bit more, maybe think about this a little bit. And then, that person will nominate you, hopefully. And then you kind of like start putting into the system all your contributions that I've done. I've organized this evening where Gerald came to speak. I have helped out a class of students and taught them about this cool Microsoft technology. You probably want to focus on like one area. Because there's different categories of MVPs. There is developer technologies, which is super broad, which is basically everything software development. And then you have like, I don't even know, it's probably in here somewhere. You have like different categories. And what you want to do is kind of like see that you have enough contributions in one category. Because if you have like contributions in this category and contributions in that category, separately, they're not enough for a Microsoft, for a MVP award, right? But together, they might be, right? But so make sure that you can have two categories, but typically that's a lot of work. So typically people have one category, and that's what you kind of like want to do. So make sure that you be active in the community, blog, post on social media, make videos on YouTube. That works too, as long as like if it's going to be like plural site courses, if you're going to have like exclusive paid content, that's not something that's eligible for MVP, right? It has to be free, it has to be available out there. It has to come from a place of passion, basically. You can also here look at kind of like, hey, there's also a section where you can look up MVPs. I think they changed this. So you can look up the people who are on here can be invisible, I think, if they want, but typically, actually here we can see the award category, right? So developer technologies, M365, business applications, Windows, IoT, Azure, obviously, Windows development. So we have all these things, and then technology area, right? So you can do all these things. People on here can make themselves hidden, I think, but typically, they're public figures, so people will be out there. Previously you could click on one and then you can see their contributions. Again, they could hide contributions if that's what you want. But you can see like how long they've been. So each year you will have to reapply if that's what you want. You can also say, I want to give up my title. I don't want to do it anymore. But typically you want to keep going. So you keep putting in your contributions each year. And then they is a team within Microsoft, I don't even know who, will look at through your list and be like, yes, you're re-awarded for another year, right? So you want to kind of like continue that streak. So you will see like, hey, 1 year in the program. This is something they can provide themselves, link to social media. This is featured activities. So this is something that they put in here that they're proud of before. But again, I think they removed that or what's this? Events? Oh, no. Okay. Before you could see kind of like all their contributions. So you could kind of like see, hey, what is this person doing? And how kind of like does that compare to the contributions that I have been doing? And then you would kind of like, make a guess of how where you're kind of like at. But if this is something that someone that you know, for instance, like if you know a Microsoft MVP in your network, or that you like Jimmy that I just linked for Blazor, right? He's an MVP. If you're like, hey, I know him, I've seen a lot of his content, just look at his social media channels, look at his website, and kind of like look at like how active has he been in the past year. So take today's date, go back to all the dates on his blogs and whatever, and you can kind of like see like, okay, he's doing all these things. How does that compare to what I'm doing? If this is something that you want, right? And kind of like see from there, and then you have to find someone. If you're in touch with an MVP, if you're in touch with a Microsoft employee, to see kind of like, hey, can we work on nominating me and get me into that program if that's something that you're interested in. The other thing is, like, again, I don't know even which team is kind of like doing the evaluations that are looking into this. There's no set criteria on how much you should do, because that would make it very easy to kind of like game the system, right? Like, oh, write 5 blog posts, do 3 videos, and boom, I'm in. It doesn't work that way. There's no criteria. There's no way to know kind of like if you've done enough, yes or no. So it's kind of like guessing, and that makes it a little bit. I trust that this team is very fair, right? Like they have their criteria probably internally, but it feels unfair sometimes from the outside, because I have had people that have done tons of contributions to open source projects that are super important to the .NET and the .NET MAUI ecosystem, and I would have nominated them, and they're like, nope, didn't happen, and I'm like. And then others will be like much more visible, right? Like do sessions on conferences all around the world, which is also super valuable, but in a totally different way. And it seems that some level of visibility is certainly important. And I get that, because you need to be able to promote your work. Being able to promote your work also helps its reach, right? And there's some kind of like reach factor in there, that you need to reach a certain amount of people. And it's all about impact at the end, right? So if you make an impact, if you come up with like this great project that it gets used by millions of people, that should be easy to nominate you and get you in, right? To get you awarded. So that visibility really helps. It's definitely not the only thing, because that person that I mentioned, I got them in, right? Like after working on it a little bit, making sure to do this a little bit more, that a little bit less, maybe. We worked together, and I got them into the program. I got them that award, so that's really cool. And also, like it's a cool reward. Don't get me wrong. I was in the program. It's very cool. It helps for your resume. It's super cool to be able to say like I'm a Microsoft MVP. But it shouldn't be a goal, right? The motivation should be like, I want to be in the community. I want to talk about this technology that I'm super passionate about, that I'm super cool about. That's why I'm talking about this stuff, right? That's why this is not part of my job. I'm a software engineer. I should work on .NET MAUI. I should write code. I should shut up. I should not talk to people. I should just write code, fix bugs. That's it. But I still love doing this. I loved it before I joined Microsoft. That's why I was a Microsoft MVP. I still love it now, right? That's why I'm taking my free time, free night tonight, to talk to you guys and girls and everyone there, to spread the love about .NET MAUI. That's what's the most important thing. If that gets awarded with this MVP title, that's great. That's a great crown on your work. If not, please still continue doing what you do, because that's amazing and that's much more worth anyway. But that's a little bit on how that process works. If anyone's interested, please let me know. I'll be happy to provide a little bit more information on that. But yeah, that's kind of like what it is and how that process all works.
Great. Okay. If there aren't any questions, I'm going to provide the links that he sent in the group. I'll share with everybody else. And for anyone else that wants to join in, we started a community, the .NET MAUI Zambian community. I just shared the link in the group. You can join in as well. It's a community where we share stuff about .NET MAUI. Like Gerald said, we talk about MAUI. In this group, we share awesome extensions that you can use to speed up your productivity, and also YouTube videos, like reference links to where you can get the best learning resources and things like that. And also hold sessions like this where we have Gerald come over, talk to us about how you can use MAUI in various ways, what it is, and the like. So thank you again, Gerald, for having us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much. And if there aren't any questions, we can end the meeting. Thank you. Have a
All
great
right.
night.
Thanks, everyone.